The slap echoed through the trauma bay like a gunshot. Nurse Emily Vance hit the floor ceramic tiles cold against her palms and didn't flinch. Didn't gasp. Didn't cry out. She just looked up at Dr. Marcus Bellamy. With those unreadable gray eyes, while blood trickled from her split lip. "Get out of my OR." He spat. She stood slowly, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand, and glanced at the monitor behind him. "That patient has maybe 4 minutes. Security." But Emily was already walking toward the exit when the alarms detonated, every machine in the room screaming at once. And while everyone else froze in shock, she was the only one already moving. Hey, stick with me until the end of this story. If it gets under your skin, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this one travels. Harborview Medical Center sat on the northeastern edge of Crescent Bay like a concrete fortress, all steel and glass and fluorescent ambition. It was the kind of place that made careers and buried mistakes in equal measure. The kind of place where your last name mattered more than your credentials. Emily Vance had neither. She'd been at Harborview for 6 weeks. A temporary rotation, they called it. Though everyone knew what that meant. Temps didn't get name badges with titles. Temps didn't get invited to department meetings. Temps got the graveyard shifts. The grunt work, and if they were lucky, a nod from someone who'd bothered to remember their first name. Most days, Emily didn't mind. She kept her head down, did her job, and ignored the whispers that followed her through the halls. The speculation, the sideways glances from nurses who'd been there long enough to smell an outsider. It was Dr. Marcus Bellamy who made it personal. He was chief of trauma surgery, 6 feet of silver-haired arrogance, wrapped in designer scrubs, and a god complex that could be seen from orbit. The son of Harrison Bellamy, the hospital's largest private donor, which meant Marcus could do exactly what he wanted and answer to exactly no one. Their first real encounter happened on a Tuesday night. 3 weeks into Emily's rotation, she'd been restocking a crash cart when Bellamy blew past her with his entourage. 2 residents who laughed at everything he said, and a physician assistant who took notes like her life depended on it. "Temp," Bellamy said without looking at her. "Coffee. Black. 2 sugars." Emily straightened. "I'm assigned to. Did I ask for your schedule?" He stopped, finally turning to look at her. "Coffee. Now." One of the residents smirked. The PA looked at her shoes. Emily held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds, long enough to let him know she'd heard him. Not long enough to give him an excuse, and walked away. She didn't get him coffee. 20 minutes later, she was reassigned to discharge paperwork for the rest of the night. That was how it worked at Harborview. Bellamy decided who mattered. And everyone else played along, because crossing him meant career suicide. The other nurses had warned her during her first week. "Just smile and nod," said Patricia, a day shift RN with 20 years under her belt. "He's a nightmare, but he's untouchable. His family practically built the cardiac wing." "Does he always talk to people like that?" Emily asked. Patricia gave her a look that was half pity, half warning. "Honey, you're temporary staff. To him, you're basically furniture." Emily didn't argue. She'd dealt with worse. But Bellamy wasn't done with her. The next incident came during a multi-vehicle trauma. 4 critical patients wheeled in at once. The ER turning into controlled chaos. Emily had been assigned to Bay 3, a teenager with a tension pneumothorax and a blood pressure dropping faster than anyone wanted to admit. She'd just finished inserting a chest tube when Bellamy swept in, scanning the room with the casual disdain of someone who assumed he'd have to fix everyone else's work. "Who placed this line?" he demanded, nodding at the IV in the patient's arm. "I did," said Emily. "Wrong vein. Redo it." She glanced at the IV. It was textbook placement, good flow. No infiltration. Zero complication. It's patent and secure. "We don't have time to." "I didn't ask for a debate." Bellamy's voice went cold. "Pull it and place a new one. Or get out of my trauma bay." The room went silent. One of the residents looked uncomfortable. Another pretended to be very interested in a chart. Emily pulled the IV. She placed a new one in the exact same vein. watched Bellamy give a curt nod, and said nothing. The patient stabilized 20 minutes later. Bellamy took credit during the debrief. That was 3 days ago. Now, standing in the hallway outside Trauma Bay 2 with her lip still bleeding and her badge clipped to scrubs that didn't quite fit, Emily wondered if she'd finally pushed him too far. The slap had come out of nowhere. They'd been working a code. 52-year-old male. Sudden cardiac arrest. No prior history. Emily had been running compressions when she noticed something off about the rhythm on the monitor. Not the usual VFib pattern. Something stuttering. Irregular. She'd called it out. Check for hyperkalemia. Bellamy hadn't even looked up. Continue compression. His potassium could be spiked. If we don't, I said, continue compressions. But Emily had seen this before. Somewhere else. Somewhere the protocols were written in blood instead of liability and you didn't get a second chance to guess, right? She'd reached for the medication cart. That's when Bellamy grabbed her arm, spun her around, and slapped her hard enough that her ears rang. Get out of my OR. The room had gone still. Surgeons, nurses, techs, all frozen mid-motion, like someone had paused a film. Emily touched her lip, felt the warm slick of blood, and looked past Bellamy at the monitor. That patient has maybe 4 minutes, she said quietly. Bellamy's face went purple. Security. Emily turned and walked. She made it 5 steps before the alarms went off. Not just one machine, all of them. A cascading failure that turned the trauma bay into a screaming wall of sound flatlines. Oxygen deassats. Pressure drops. Everything at once. Emily spun around. The patient on the table, the one Bellamy had been coding, was seizing, not the kind of seizure you see in textbooks, the kind where the body locks rigid and the jaw clamps shut, and every muscle tears itself apart from the inside. Hyperkalemic crisis. Exactly what she'd warned them about. Bellamy stared at the monitor like it had personally betrayed him. Push epi, that'll kill him, Emily said, already moving back into the room. I didn't ask calcium chloride. 10 milliliters IV push. Now, she didn't wait for permission. Just grabbed the vial from the crash cart, drew it up, and slammed it into the patient's line. One of the residents started to protest. Emily ignored him. Insulin with dextrose. She continued. Already pulling the next medication. We need to shift potassium back into the cells before his heart stops for good. You don't have the authority, Bellamy started. The patient's rhythm stabilized. Not completely, not perfectly, but the seizing stopped. The rigid lockjaw released, and the monitor started showing something that resembled a functional heartbeat. Emily stepped back, breathing hard, and looked at Bellamy. He stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You're done here, he said finally. His voice was quiet, dangerous. Pack your things. You're terminated. Marcus, one of the residents, began, Get her out of my hospital. Emily didn't argue. She stripped off her gloves, dropped them in the biohazard bin, and walked out. Behind her, she heard someone mutter. How did she know? She didn't answer. In the locker room, Emily sat on the bench and stared at her hands. They weren't shaking. They should have been adrenaline dump. Post-crisis crash. All the things that happen to normal people after something like that. But Emily's hands were steady. She touched her split lip, winced, and grabbed her bag from the locker. She'd be gone in 10 minutes. Out of the building in 15. Just another temp who couldn't cut it. Another name nobody would remember. That's when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, report to director's office. Immediately, Emily frowned. She'd expected security to escort her out. Maybe HR to hand her a severance packet. But the director, that was unusual. She headed upstairs. The administrative wing was quiet this time of night. Most of the pencil pushers had gone home hours ago, leaving only the skeleton crew of night supervisors and the janitors who pretended not to hear the things that happened behind closed doors. Director Nathan Cross's office sat at the end of the hall. All dark wood and leather furniture that screamed old money. The kind of office where bad news got delivered with expensive whiskey and a firm handshake. Emily knocked. Come in. Cross was standing by the window when she entered, hands clasped behind his back. Looking out over the city like a general surveying a battlefield, he was older than Bellamy, mid-60s, with the kind of weathered face that came from decades of making decisions other people couldn't stomach. "Sit," he said without turning around. Emily sat. "You've been here 6 weeks. Cross continued. "In that time, you've filed 0 complaints, made 0 waves, and according to every report I've read, done your job competently and without incident." Emily said nothing. And yet, Cross turned to face her. "Doctor, Bellamy has requested your immediate termination. Claims? You countermanded his orders during a code. Endangered a patient. Assaulted him. I didn't." Cross held up a hand. "I don't care what happened in that trauma bay. I care about liability. I care about lawsuits. I care about a temporary nurse with no reputation going up against the chief of trauma surgery whose family has donated 8 figures to this hospital." Emily's jaw tightened. "So here's what's going to happen," Cross said. "You're going to sign a non-disclosure agreement. You're going to accept a severance package. Generous, considering the circumstances. And you're going to disappear. Quietly." He slid a folder across the desk. Emily didn't touch it. "That patient," she said quietly, "the one in Bay 2, what was his potassium level when you ran the labs?" Cross's expression didn't change. "That's not your concern anymore." 7.9, Emily said. "Maybe 8.2? High enough that standard ACLS protocol would have killed him in under 3 minutes. Silence. You saved his life." Cross said finally, "Congratulations. Now sign the paperwork and leave before I have security remove you." Emily stood. She didn't sign anything, just turned and walked toward the door. "Miss Vance." She paused, hand on the doorknob. "If you try to make this public," Cross said, "I will bury you. Do you understand? You'll never work in healthcare again. Not in this city. Not anywhere." Emily looked back at him. Understood. She left. In the elevator, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. 6 weeks. That's all she'd lasted. 6 weeks of keeping her head down, playing by their rules, pretending she was just another faceless temp. And it still wasn't enough. The elevator doors opened on the ground floor. Emily stepped out and nearly collided with a gurney being rushed through the ER entrance. "Move," someone shouted. She flattened against the wall as the trauma team sprinted past, wheeling in a patient who was seizing so violently the restraints were barely holding. Behind them came another gurney. Then another. 3 critical patients in 30 seconds. Mass casualty event. Emily's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. All available personnel report to ER. Code black. Code black? The kind of emergency that happened maybe twice a year, overwhelming casualties. Multiple critical patients. Systems stretched past breaking. Emily looked at the exit, then at the ER doors. She should leave. She was fired. Her badge was probably already deactivated. This wasn't her problem anymore, but she could hear the chaos from here, the shouting, the alarms, the barely controlled panic of a department that had just been hit with more than it could handle. Emily turned back toward the ER. She made it 3 steps before someone grabbed her arm. Vance. It was Patricia, the day shift RN. Her scrubs already splattered with blood. "Thank God. We need everyone." Bay 4, multiple traumas from a chain reaction pileup on the bridge. 2 more rigs inbound. It's a nightmare. I don't care. We're drowning. You in or not? Emily hesitated for exactly 1 second. Then she followed Patricia into the war zone. The ER had transformed in the 10 minutes since she'd left. Every bay full? Every monitor screaming. Every staff member moving at a dead sprint between patients who were all trying to die at once. Emily grabbed a pair of gloves from the wall dispenser and ducked into Bay 4. 16-year-old girl. Unrestrained passenger. Ejected through the windshield. Massive head trauma. Suspected internal bleeding. Blood pressure. Tanking fast, a first-year resident stood frozen at the bedside, staring at the monitor like he was waiting for it to tell him what to do. Pressure, Emily asked. 60/40 and dropping. The resident said, I don't. Hang 2 units O-neg and start a pressure infuser. Get a fast exam to check for internal bleeding. Now. The resident moved. Emily worked. She lost track of time after that, minutes blurring into hours. One crisis bleeding into the next. A 60-year-old with a crushed chest. A paramedic who'd been hit while trying to secure the scene. A kid with a shattered femur and a look in his eyes that said he knew he was dying. Emily kept them all alive. She was working on patient number 7, a woman with a steering column through her abdomen, when the power flickered, just for a second. A brief dip that made the lights stutter and the monitors reset. Then it happened again. What the hell? Someone muttered. The overhead PA crackled to life. Attention all staff. We are experiencing a system-wide electrical fault. Backup generators are online. Repeat. Backup generators are online. Continue normal operations. But the lights flickered a third time. And this time, they didn't come back on. The ER plunged into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in after 3 seconds. Dim red strips along the floor. Battery-powered monitors glowing like dying stars. But half the equipment was down, including the ventilators. Someone screamed. Emily grabbed a manual resuscitator bag and started bagging her patient. I need a flashlight and someone on compressions now. Chaos erupted. Nurses scrambling for backup equipment. Residents shouting questions no one had answers for. Somewhere in the darkness, an alarm was wailing. A sound that meant someone's heart had stopped and no one could see well enough to save them. The PA crackled again. Code blue. Base 7. Code blue. Bay 7. That was Bellamy's Bay. Emily kept bagging her patient, counting breaths, staying focused. Not her problem. Not her patient. Not her. Vance Patricia appeared out of the shadows. Wild-eyed. Bay 7. Bellamy's coding a VIP patient and he's losing it. We need help. I'm fired. Remember, I don't give a damn. People are dying. Emily looked at her patient stable for now. Another nurse taking over the bagging and made a decision she knew she'd regret. She ran toward Bay 7. The scene inside was pandemonium. Bellamy was doing compressions himself, something Emily had never seen him do. Around him, 3 residents stood paralyzed, none of them willing to make a call without orders. All of them watching their chief fall apart in real time. The patient on the table was mid-40s. Male. Dressed in what looked like expensive civilian clothes, but with something off about the fit. Military posture. Tactical watch. A tattoo on his forearm that Emily recognized but couldn't place. Epi's not working. One of the residents said, "We've pushed 3 rounds." Then push another. Bellamy snarled, "Not breaking rhythm." Emily moved closer, squinting at the monitor in the dim emergency lighting. The rhythm was wrong. Not asystole. Not V-fib. Something else. Entirely a pattern she'd seen exactly once before. In a field hospital outside Kandahar, when a contractor had coded, after a blast injury, cardiac tamponade, you need to drain the pericardium. Emily said. Bellamy didn't look up. Get her out of here. He's got fluid around his heart. Compressions won't work. I said get her out. But Emily was already moving, grabbing a ultrasound probe from the crash cart. She squeezed gel onto the patient's chest and pressed the probe below his sternum. There, a dark shadow around the heart, blood filling the pericardial sac, squeezing the chambers shut. Pericardiocentesis. Emily said, "Now, or he's dead in 90 seconds. Bellamy stopped compressions, stared at her. You don't know what you're... The patient's rhythm flatlined. Complete asystole. Emily grabbed a pericardiocentesis kit from the procedure cart, tore it open, and positioned the needle below the patient's xiphoid process. If you stick that needle in his chest without my authorization. Bellamy said, his voice deadly, quiet. I will have you arrested for assault. Emily looked at him, then at the patient, then back at Bellamy. Arrest me, after I save him. She inserted the needle, 45 degrees up, aiming for the left shoulder, slow and steady pressure until she felt the give of the pericardium. Then she pulled back on the syringe. Dark blood filled the chamber. 60 milliliters. 80. 100. The monitor beeped. One beat, then another. The patient's heart started contracting again, weak at first, then stronger. Emily withdrew the needle, applied pressure to the insertion site, and stepped back. The room was silent except for the monitor's steady beeping. Bellamy stared at the patient, at Emily, at his residents, who were looking at her like she'd just walked on water. How did you... One of them began. The ER doors exploded inward, not figuratively, literally. A 6-man tactical team poured into the trauma bay. Rifles raised, moving with the kind of precision that made everyone freeze on instinct. They wore black tactical gear with no insignia, comms units clipped to their vests, and the kind of weapons you didn't see outside war zones. The team leader scanned the room and his rifle lowered fractionally when he saw the patient. Status. He barked. Nobody answered. I said status. Emily stepped forward. Stabilized. Pericardial tamponade. Secondary to blunt force trauma. I drained approximately 120 milliliters. Rhythm stable. But he needs a cardiothoracic surgeon and a CT scan to check for who treated him. I did. The team leader's eyes narrowed. Credentials. Behind her, Bellamy finally found his voice. She's nobody. Temporary staff. I'm the chief of... I asked her. The team leader's voice could have cut glass. Credentials. Now. Emily hesitated. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out something she hadn't touched in 3 years. ID card. Military issue. Laminated and worn at the edges. She held it up. The team leader took it, scanned it with a handheld device, and went very still. He looked at Emily, at the card, back at Emily. Then he lowered his rifle completely and stepped back. Secure the perimeter, he said to his team. Nobody in or out without clearance. What the hell is going on? Bellamy demanded. The team leader ignored him. He was still looking at Emily. Captain Vance, he said. We need to talk. Right now. The ER went silent. Emily felt every eye in the room turned toward her. Bellamy. The residents. Patricia. Everyone. Captain. Not nurse. Not temp. Captain. I'm not. Emily started. Ma'am. With respect. This isn't a request. The team leader's voice dropped low enough that only she could hear. That patient is attached to Operation Blacklight. Level 5 clearance. And according to our records, you're the only person in this building authorized to treat him. Emily's blood went cold. Operation Blacklight. She hadn't heard that designation in 3 years. Hadn't thought about it. Hadn't let herself remember the things she'd done under that clearance, or the people who died despite it. I'm out, she said quietly. I've been out for... Your clearance was never revoked. The team leader's expression was unreadable, which means right now, you're not just his doctor, you're his commanding officer. Behind them, the patient started seizing again. Emily's hands were already moving before her brain fully processed what was happening. She grabbed the patient's jaw, forced it open, checked his airway. Tongue wasn't blocking. No aspiration. The seizing was neurological, not respiratory, which meant, get me diazepam, 5 milligrams IV push, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. And somebody find out what medications he's been given in the last 6 hours. One of the residents fumbled with the med cart. The team leader barked something into his comm unit. Bellamy stood frozen, his face cycling through expressions. Emily didn't have time to decode. She got the diazepam into the patient's line and watched his body slowly relax. The violent muscle contractions easing into tremors and then stillness. The monitor stabilized. Not perfect, but alive. Emily stepped back, her scrubs now soaked with blood and sweat, and looked at the team leader. He needs to be moved. Somewhere secure with full ICU capabilities. This ER is compromised. Agreed. The team leader gestured to two of his men. Prep for transport. I want a route cleared and a sterile environment ready in 15 minutes. You can't just take him, Bellamy said, finally finding his voice. This is my hospital. My patient. You have no authority. The team leader turned to him with the kind of look that ended arguments before they started. This facility is now under federal jurisdiction. You can cooperate or you can be removed. Choose quickly. Bellamy's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Director Cross appeared in the doorway, his face pale in the emergency lighting. What in the hell is going on in my ER? Your ER just became a secure site. The team leader said without looking at him, we need everyone, except essential personnel, cleared from this wing. Now. On whose authority? The team leader pulled out a phone, tapped the screen twice, and held it up. Cross looked at whatever was displayed, and all the color drained from his face. I'll make the announcement, Cross said quietly. He disappeared. Emily checked the patient's vitals again. Blood pressure holding at 90/60. Heart rate elevated but steady. Oxygen saturation climbing back toward normal. He'd make it. Probably. Captain Vance. She looked up. The team leader was standing close enough that she could see the name tape on his vest. Morrison. I need a sitrep. Morrison said. Everything that happened from the moment he arrived. Emily ran through it, the initial presentation. Bellamy's failed attempts at standard resuscitation, her diagnosis of cardiac tamponade, the pericardiocentesis. Morrison listened without interrupting, his expression giving nothing away. And the seizure he asked when she finished could be a dozen things. Head trauma, hypoxia, drug interaction. I won't know until we get imaging and a full tox screen. Morrison nodded slowly. How did you know it was tamponade? The rhythm pattern. I've seen it before. Where Emily met his eyes. You already know where. Something shifted in Morrison's expression, not quite respect, but close. Recognition. Maybe an acknowledgement that they'd both been to the same dark places and survived. Your clearance says you were attached to a field surgical team? Morrison said, forward operating bases. Trauma stabilization. Under fire. That was a long time ago. Doesn't look that way from where I'm standing. Before Emily could respond, one of Morrison's team members called out from the doorway. Sir, we've got a problem. Morrison's hand went to his sidearm. What kind of problem? 2 more critical patients just coded. Different bays. Staff is overwhelmed. Emily's stomach dropped. At the same time, within 30 seconds of each other. That wasn't a coincidence. That was a pattern. Morrison looked at Emily. Could it be the power failure? Maybe. But we've had backup systems running for 20 minutes. If they were going to crash from equipment failure, it would have happened already. Then what Emily's mind raced through possibilities, discarding each one as fast as it appeared. Multiple simultaneous crashes in different patients with different conditions during a mass casualty event. No shared risk factors. No obvious connection except they were all here. In this ER, during a code black. Who called in the code black? Emily asked suddenly. Morrison frowned. What? The mass casualty alert. Who initiated it? Hospital protocol. When multiple traumas exceed capacity, I know what it means. I'm asking who physically made the call. Morrison spoke into his comm unit. A pause. Then dispatch says the alert came from your hospital's emergency coordinator, approximately 35 minutes ago. Emily grabbed a nearby computer terminal, logged in with her temp credentials, which, surprisingly, still worked, and pulled up the ER's patient tracking system. 8 critical patients had arrived in the last 40 minutes. All from the bridge pileup, all triaged as level 1 traumas. But something was wrong with the arrival times. The first 3 patients had come in together that made sense for a multi-vehicle accident. But the next 5 had arrived in staggered intervals, each one exactly 7 minutes apart. 7 minutes. Like clockwork. That's not random, Emily said aloud. Morrison leaned over her shoulder. Explain. Real mass casualties don't arrive in neat intervals. They come in waves, everyone at once. Then a gap, then the delayed discoveries. But these are too precise. Someone's controlling the flow. Why would anyone do that? Emily stared at the screen. Herr Puls, hammering in her ears. To overload the system, keep us too busy to notice something else. Notice what? That's when the lights went out again. Not just the emergency strips this time. Everything. Complete darkness so absolute that Emily couldn't see her own hand in front of her face. Morrison's team immediately switched on weapon-mounted flashlights. Beams cutting through the blackness like searchlights. Someone was shouting in the hallway. A crash of metal equipment falling. Another scream. Then, cutting through the chaos, a single sound that made Emily's blood turn to ice. Gunfire. 3 shots. Close. Maybe 2 hallways over. Morrison's entire team shifted into combat mode in half a second. Weapons up. Formations tight. Lockdown. Morrison barked into his comm. We have active shooters in the building. Repeat active shooters. All units respond. More gunfire. Closer this time. Emily's instincts kicked in the same ones that had kept her alive in places where the line between hospital and battlefield stopped existing. She dropped low, grabbed the patient's gurney, and started wheeling him toward the back of the trauma bay. What are you doing? One of the residents hissed. Getting him out of the kill zone. You should do the same. Morrison appeared beside her, his rifle up and scanning the darkness. Where are you taking him? Service corridor. Leads to the loading dock. If someone's coming for him, they'll expect us to hunker down or run for the main exits. You're thinking tactically. I'm thinking like someone who doesn't want to die in a hospital hallway. Morrison considered this for maybe 2 seconds. Move. My team will cover you. They pushed the gurney through a door marked Staff Only into a narrow corridor that smelled like bleach and old floor wax. Emergency lighting here was even dimmer, just a few battery-powered units spaced every 20 feet, casting everything in sickly yellow. Behind them, the gunfire intensified. Automatic weapons now. Multiple shooters. How many? Emily asked. At least 4. Morrison said. Professional. Coordinated. They knew exactly when to hit us. During a code black. When everyone's distracted. Yeah. They reached an intersection. Morrison signaled for his team to hold position while he cleared the next corridor. Emily kept one hand on the patient's wrist, monitoring his pulse. Still weak, but present. The patient's eyes fluttered open. Emily leaned down. Hey, stay with me. Don't try to talk. But he was already talking. See you. His voice barely a whisper. Vance. She blinked. You know my name. Briefing. File. He coughed. Grimaced. You were listed as backup contact. For what? Black light? Another cough. This one wet. If primary team compromised. Morrison appeared next to her. He shouldn't be conscious. Tell him that. Emily muttered. To the patient, what's your name, Daniels? Major. Thomas Daniels. His eyes focused on her with surprising clarity. They're here. For me. Who's here? Don't know. But they knew. The route? Knew the timing. His hand suddenly gripped her wrist with shocking strength. Someone inside. Sold us out. Emily looked at Morrison. Your team impossible. We were scrambled 90 minutes ago. Nobody outside command knew we'd be here. Then hospital staff. Emily said, someone who knew about the code black. Someone who could control patient flow. Daniels coughed again. And this time blood came up. Not a good sign. Emily grabbed gauze from the emergency kit strapped to the gurney and wiped his mouth. We need to get you to a secure location. Full surgical suite. You're bleeding internally, and an explosion rocked the building. Not close, but big enough that Emily felt it through the floor, heard the structural groan of concrete and steel, adjusting to sudden violence. The lights flickered once and died completely. Total darkness. Morrison's team switched to night vision. Their movements now completely silent. Professional operators doing what they were trained for. Emily didn't have night vision, just muscle memory and spatial awareness and the knowledge that standing still got you killed. She kept pushing the gurney. "Where are you going?" Morrison's voice came from somewhere to her left. "South service elevator. It's got an independent power supply for equipment transport. Should still be running. Should you got a better idea?" Morrison appeared beside her, one hand on her shoulder, guiding her through the darkness. "Stay close. My men will lead." They moved as a unit, Morrison's team forming a protective diamond around the gurney, weapons scanning for threats. Every footstep measured and deliberate. Emily counted doors as they passed. 4, 5, 6. The elevator should be just ahead. Around the next corner. They made it 3 more steps before the gunfire found them. Muzzle flashes lit up the corridor like strobe lights brief. Blinding snapshots of men in tactical gear who definitely weren't hospital security. Morrison's team returned fire instantly, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. "Move." Morrison shoved Emily forward. She ran, pushing the gurney, her ears ringing from the gunshots. Behind her, Morrison's team was laying down suppressive fire, buying them seconds. The elevator doors appeared in front of her. She slammed the call button. Nothing. She hit it again. Again. The panel stayed dark. "Damit," Emily hissed. She looked around, her eyes adjusting slightly to the ambient light from distant emergency strips. There, a stairwell access door. 10 feet to the left. She changed direction, steering the gurney toward it. Morrison appeared beside her, reloading his rifle with practiced efficiency. "They're pushing hard," he said. "Professional squad. Military-grade weapons. How many 6 that I've seen? Probably more." They reached the stairwell. Emily grabbed the door handle and pulled. Locked. "You have got to be kidding me," she muttered. Morrison didn't waste time talking. He just raised his rifle and shot the lock mechanism 3 times. The door swung open. "After you," he said. Emily pushed the gurney through. The stairwell was barely wide enough. She had to angle it carefully to avoid catching the wheels on the frame. Morrison and 2 of his team members followed, the others staying behind to hold the corridor. "We can't leave them," Emily said. "They're buying us time. Don't waste it." They started down the stairs, Morrison ahead to clear the way, Emily maneuvering the gurney step by step. It was awkward, slow, and every bang from above made her flinch. Daniels grabbed her arm again. "The case?" he whispered. "What case?" "My jacket. Inside pocket. Can't let them get it." Emily reached into his jacket and found a small metal case, about the size of a deck of cards. Heavy, sealed with a biometric lock. "What is this?" "Proof." Daniels said. "Everything. Blacklight. The targets. The kills. All of it." Emily's stomach twisted. She remembered Blacklight now. Or at least the rumors. A Black Ops program that operated outside normal chains of command. The kind of thing that left bodies in unmarked graves and questions no one was allowed to ask. She'd been part of it for 8 months before she'd requested a transfer. Before she'd seen enough to know she needed to get out before it destroyed her. "Why do you have this?" she asked. "Insurance." Daniels smiled, blood on his teeth. "In case they tried to bury me too." Morrison stopped at a landing, held up a fist. Everyone froze. Voices below them. Multiple people moving up the stairs. They were trapped. Morrison looked at Emily, his expression grim. Options. Emily scanned the landing. One door leading back into the hospital. A small window too small to climb through. Nothing else. We go through, she said, nodding at the door. Into what radiology department? Should be mostly empty this time of night. Lots of rooms. Good cover. Should be. It's that or make a last stand in a stairwell. Morrison made the call in 2 seconds. Through the door. Move. They pushed into the radiology wing. It was dark here too. But quieter, the kind of quiet that came from being far from the main action. Emily oriented herself quickly. CT scanners to the left, MRI units to the right. Staff offices. At the far end, and one room she remembered from her rotation, the lead line procedure suite where they did fluoroscopy-guided interventions. This way, she said. They made it to the procedure suite, just as the stairwell door behind them exploded inward. No gunfire this time, something heavier. Breaching charge. Maybe. Morrison's remaining team member took up position at the door, while Emily and Morrison wheeled Daniels into the suite. It was a decent defensive position. Thick walls, one entrance, and enough medical equipment that they could keep Daniels alive if things went bad. When things went bad, Emily corrected herself mentally. Morrison was on his comm, speaking in rapid-fire tactical shorthand. Emily caught enough to understand his other team members were down. Not dead, but pinned. Unable to assist, they were on their own. Contacts in the hallway. Morrison's team member said from the door, "En4. No. 5. They're setting up for a breach." Morrison checked his magazine. "How many rounds do you have left?" 40. "Maybe 50 if I'm lucky." "I've got 30. Not enough. Not even close." Emily looked around the room, her mind racing. They couldn't fight their way out. Couldn't run. Couldn't call for help because anyone who responded would just walk into an ambush. Her eyes fell on the fluoroscopy unit, a large C-arm X-ray machine used for real-time imaging during procedures. An idea formed. Terrible. Desperate. Probably suicidal. But better than nothing. "How much radiation does that thing put out?" Morrison asked. Following her gaze, "Enough to see through flesh. Not enough to hurt anyone." "You sure?" "No." Morrison almost smiled. "What are you thinking?" Emily explained quickly. Morrison listened, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "That's insane," he said finally. "You have a better idea." "No." Outside, someone was shouting orders. Setting up for the breach. They had maybe 60 seconds. Morrison looked at his team member. "Rodriguez, you good with this?" The man Rodriguez grinned. "Hell yeah. Beats dying in a closet." They moved fast. Emily positioned the fluoroscopy unit near the door, angling it so the radiation cone would sweep across the entrance. Morrison and Rodriguez took up positions on either side. Weapons ready. Emily grabbed Daniel's gurney and wheeled him to the farthest corner, behind the thickest lead barrier she could find. "This is crazy," Daniels whispered. "I know. I like you." "Captain. I'm not a captain anymore." "Could have fooled me?" The door blew inward. Emily hit the fluoroscopy unit's activation pedal. Nothing happened. No power. Of course there was no power. The whole building was on emergency backup and non-essential equipment was offline. Emily Morrison shouted. She dove for the emergency power switch on the wall. Slammed it up. The fluoroscopy unit hummed to life. Its screen glowing green. She hit the pedal again. This time it worked. The C-arm rotated, flooding the doorway with invisible radiation and very visible X-ray imaging on the screen. The men trying to breach stopped, confused by the strange machine. That moment of confusion cost them. Morrison and Rodriguez opened fire. Using the X-ray screen to target through the walls, the attackers went down, their weapons clattering to the floor, but more were coming. Emily could hear them in the hallway. "Regrouping. We can't hold this position," Rodriguez said, ejecting an empty magazine. Morrison knew it too. Emily could see the calculation in his eyes, the acceptance that they'd run out of options. That's when the ceiling exploded. Not from a bomb, from a breaching team rappelling down from the floor above, their boots hitting the tiles with synchronized precision. But these weren't the attackers. These were Navy SEALs. Emily recognized the gear, the movements, the absolute lethality in every action. They swept the room in 3 seconds, secured the hallway in 5, and had the remaining attackers neutralized before Emily's brain caught up with what was happening. A man stepped through the debris, his face covered by a balaclava, but his rank insignia visible on his vest. "Major Daniels," he said, his voice calm. Here," Morrison answered, gesturing to the gurney. The SEAL commander moved to Daniels, checked his vitals with the efficiency of someone cross-trained in combat medicine. "We're extracting you. Now, about damn time." Daniels muttered. The commander looked at Emily. "You, Vance." She nodded. "You're coming with us." "I'm not. That wasn't a request." "Captain, you're the only person outside our unit who knows what Daniels is carrying, which makes you a security asset until we determine otherwise." Emily looked at Morrison, who shrugged. "Welcome to the world of classified operations. You never really leave." The SEALs moved with brutal efficiency. 2 of them lifted Daniels onto a transport stretcher designed for tactical extractions. 2 more secured the hallway. The commander grabbed Emily's arm, not rough, but firm. "Stay close. Do exactly what I say. If shooting starts, you hit the deck. Clear. Clear." They moved out as a unit, back into the corridor where bodies now littered the floor. Emily tried not to look too closely, tried not to think about the fact that 20 minutes ago she'd been a fired temp nurse, and now she was in the middle of a military extraction operation. The SEALs led them to a service elevator Emily hadn't known existed. The commander swiped a keycard and the doors opened immediately. They piled inside. The elevator dropped fast, her stomach lurching. Nobody spoke. 30 seconds later, the doors opened onto the hospital's subterranean loading dock. 2 armored SUVs waited, engines running, doors open. They loaded Daniels into the first vehicle. The commander pushed Emily toward the second. "Wait," she said. "What about Morrison's team, the people still upstairs?" "Already secured. Everyone gets out, and the hospital, the patients, local PD, is establishing a perimeter. The attackers are down or running. It's over." Emily looked back at the hospital. Her hospital. Even though they'd fired her, and thought about all the people inside. The nurses. The patients. Patricia and the residents, and even Cross and Bellamy. "I need to go back," she said. The commander stared at her. "You're joking. People are dying up there. The ER is still in crisis. I can help. You're a security asset in an active. I'm a nurse." Emily interrupted. "And there are patients who need me more than you do." The commander looked at Morrison, who'd appeared beside them. "She always this stubborn. I just met her an hour ago," Morrison said. "But yeah, I'm guessing yes." The commander was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke in low tones. Emily couldn't hear. He hung up. "You've got 30 minutes, he said. "Then we're extracting you whether you like it or not. And Vance, if you tell anyone what you saw tonight, you'll spend the next decade in a federal facility answering questions." "Understood." "Understood." She turned and ran back toward the elevator before he could change his mind. The ride up felt longer than the ride down. When the doors opened on the ER level, Emily stepped out into a very different scene than the one she'd left. The lights were back on emergency. Crews had restored primary power. The gunfire had stopped. Hospital security and what looked like FBI agents were everywhere. Securing the scene, taking statements, clearing rooms. Emily made her way back to the trauma bays. The chaos had lessened but hadn't disappeared. Patients still needed care. Nurses were still overwhelmed. And somewhere in the mess, Bellamy was shouting at someone. Patricia spotted her first. "Vance, where the hell have you been? Long story? What do you need?" Patricia laughed. A slightly hysterical sound. Everything. Bay 3 is coding again. Bay 7 needs someone to close a chest. And Bay 5 has a kid who won't stop screaming because someone told him his mother didn't make it. Emily rolled up her sleeves. I'll take Bay 3. She worked for the next 28 minutes. She moved between patients, stabilizing what could be stabilized, making the hard calls when they needed to be made. She saved 2 lives. Lost 1. And helped a terrified teenager understand that sometimes bad things happen, and all you can do is keep breathing. When the commander's people came for her 2 agents in suits who appeared silently at her elbow, she was in the middle of suturing a laceration. 2 minutes. She told them. They waited. She finished the suture, cleaned the wound, bandaged it properly. Then she stripped off her gloves, washed her hands, and turned to face them. Time to go. Captain, one of them said. They walked her out through the main entrance. This time, past the crowd of reporters being held back by police barricades, past the ambulances still arriving with patients from the bridge, past Director Cross, who stood near the administrative entrance, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the last hour. Their eyes met. Cross opened his mouth, closed it, said nothing. Emily kept walking. The agents led her to an unmarked sedan parked in a no-parking zone. She got in the back seat. They got in front. Where are we going? She asked. Secure facility. Debriefing. Standard protocol after a blacklight incident. And then, the agent driving looked at her in the rearview mirror. That depends on what you tell us. Mom. The car pulled away from Harborview Medical Center. Emily watched it recede in the side mirror, all those lights. All that chaos. All those people who'd treated her like she didn't matter. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thank you for saving my life. TD, she almost smiled. Then another text came through. Different number. This one made her blood run cold. You should have let him die. Now we're coming for you too. Emily stared at the message. Her thumb hovering over the screen. The words didn't change. Didn't disappear. They just sat there, glowing in the darkness of the sedan's back seat, promising violence. The agent in the passenger seat turned around. Everything okay? Ma'am. She locked her phone. Fine. But it wasn't fine. Someone knew she had Daniel's case. Someone knew she was alive and mobile, and now categorized as a target, which meant the attackers at the hospital hadn't been a random hit, they'd been coordinated. Informed. And probably watching her right now. Emily glanced out the window. They were heading north on the coastal highway, away from the city center. Fewer cars here. Fewer witnesses. Perfect place for an ambush. How far to the facility, she asked. 20 minutes. Too long. Emily's hand went to her pocket. Feeling the weight of Daniel's case. She should give it to them. Let them handle it. Let someone else carry the target on their back. But Daniels had trusted her with it, had looked her in the eye and said, proof. Everything blacklight. The targets. The kills, if she handed it over now, it would disappear into the classified void. And she'd never know what she'd helped protect. Never know if Daniels was a hero or a war criminal or something worse. The sedan slowed. Emily's pulse spiked. Why are we stopping traffic? The driver said, but there was no traffic. The highway ahead was empty, lit by overhead sodium lamps that turned everything. The color of old bruises. The agent in the passenger seat reached for his radio. Control. This is Transport 7. We've got a... The windshield exploded. Not from gunfire. From something heavier, a round that punched through the glass and took the driver's headrest apart in a spray of foam and fabric. The sedan swerved hard. The driver slumped. And they were spinning tires, screaming. Metal shrieking as they hit the guardrail. Emily's head slammed into the window. Stars burst across her vision. The world tilted 90 degrees, and she was hanging sideways in her seatbelt. Blood running into her eye. The passenger agent was moving, trying to get his weapon clear. He never made it. The driver's side door was ripped open, and someone put 2 rounds through his chest at point-blank range. Emily fumbled with her seatbelt. Her fingers weren't working right. Everything felt slow and disconnected, like moving through water. The rear door opened. A man leaned in tactical gear, suppressed rifle, face covered, except for his eyes. Those eyes swept over her, cold and professional, doing the same calculation Emily had done 100 times in field hospital's threat assessment, asset evaluation. How much trouble will this one be? The case? He said. Now, Emily's hand was already in her pocket. She pulled out the metal case, held it up. The man reached for it. Emily triggered the biometric lock. It beeped 3 times a failure code that meant the device was now locked to her thumbprint for the next 6 hours. Security protocol Daniels must have programmed in case of exactly this scenario. The man's eyes narrowed. What did you do? Made it worthless to you. He raised his rifle. Emily closed her eyes. The shot never came. Instead, the man's head snapped sideways, and he dropped a neat hole behind his ear. Someone else was shooting precision fire from somewhere. Emily couldn't see. She scrambled out of the sedan, her legs barely holding her weight. Her vision swam. Concussion. Probably. She needed to move anyway. More gunfire. Close. The distinctive crack of high-velocity rounds passing overhead. Emily ran, not toward anything, just away, into the darkness beyond the highway lights. Down an embankment thick with scrub brush and broken concrete. She slid, fell, got up, kept moving. Behind her, the firefight intensified. Multiple weapons now. Someone was screaming orders in a language she didn't recognize. She made it 50 yards before her legs gave out completely. She collapsed behind a drainage culvert, gasping, her head pounding, like someone was using it for drum practice. Footsteps approached. Emily pressed herself against the concrete, trying to be small, trying to be invisible. Vance? She knew that voice. Morrison. He appeared around the culvert. Rifle up. Scanning for threats? When he saw her, he lowered the weapon fractionally. You hurt? He asked. Concussion. Maybe broken ribs? I'll live. Can you walk? Can I have a choice? No. Morrison pulled her to her feet. She swayed, caught herself. He steadied her with one hand, never taking his eyes off the highway above. My team's been tracking you since you left the hospital, he said. Good thing, too. Someone leaked your route. Inside job has to be. Those agents were federal. Their transport codes are compartmentalized. Someone with high clearance sold you out. Emily's mind raced through the implications. If someone inside the system wanted her dead, going to any official facility was suicide. She couldn't trust the agents. Couldn't trust the debrief. Couldn't trust anyone wearing a badge or carrying credentials. Where can we go? She asked. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Then I know a place. Off the grid. Safe house from my contract days. How far? 2 hours. If we move fast. They moved fast. Morrison had a vehicle stashed a half-mile down a service road, an older SUV with civilian plates and nothing that screamed military. They got in. Morrison drove. Emily pressed a wadded shirt against the cut on her forehead and tried not to throw up. The case, Morrison said after 10 minutes of silence. What's really on it? Emily pulled it out, turned it over in her hands. Daniels said proof. Blacklight operations. Targets and kills. You looked at it. It's biometrically locked. To me, apparently, Morrison's hands tightened on the wheel. So whoever wants it has to keep you alive. Until they figure out how to break the lock. Which they will. Give them enough time and the right equipment, they'll crack anything. Emily knew he was right. The case was a ticking clock. Eventually, someone would get what was inside. And she'd become disposable. Unless she opened it first, I need a computer. She said, something secure. Can you get that? At the safe house? Military-grade encryption. Isolated network. Should be clean. They drove. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by rural darkness and the occasional gas station glowing like a lighthouse. Morrison took back roads, doubled back twice, ran counter-surveillance protocols. Emily recognized from training manuals she'd read a lifetime ago. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a threat. It was a news alert, breaking. Multiple casualties reported at Harborview Medical Center following armed assault. Federal investigation underway. Hospital director resigns. Cross had resigned. That was fast. Another alert came through 30 seconds later. Harborview chief surgeon suspended pending investigation into patient death and staff assault allegations. Belame. Emily should have felt satisfaction. Should have felt vindicated. Instead, she just felt tired. You okay? Morrison asked. Bellamy's suspended. Cross is gone. Good. Is it? Morrison glanced at her. You're not seriously defending them. No. But people died tonight. Because someone used a hospital as a battlefield. That's on all of us. That's on whoever sent the hit squad. Not you? Emily didn't answer. She leaned her head against the window and watched the darkness scroll past. They reached the safe house just after midnight. It was a small cabin tucked into the woods, about 90 miles north of Crescent Bay. Accessible only by a dirt road that probably washed out every winter. No neighbors, no cell service, no witnesses. Perfect. Morrison swept the interior while Emily sat in the SUV, trying to keep her vision from doubling. When he came back out, he gave the all clear. Inside, the cabin was sparse but functional. 2 rooms. A kitchenette. A bathroom that had seen better decades. The computer setup Morrison had mentioned occupied an entire wall of the main room, 3 monitors, a server stack. Enough processing power to run a small country. Contract work, Emily asked. Something like that. He booted up the system while Emily cleaned her head wound in the bathroom. The cut wasn't as bad as it felt. Scalp wounds always bled like murder, but her reflection looked like she'd lost a bar fight. Bruised. Exhausted. Done. She splashed water on her face and went back to the main room. Morrison had the center monitor active. A command prompt. Blinking expectantly. Case, he said. Emily handed it over. Morrison connected it to the system via a USB-C cable. Rana diagnostic. The screen filled with code encryption protocols, security layers, authentication requirements. It's definitely military grade, Morrison said. Triple-layer encryption with rotating keys. Someone really didn't want this opened. Can you crack it? With your biometric signature? Yeah. Might take an hour. Do it? While Morrison worked, Emily made coffee in the kitchenette. Her hands shook as she measured grounds, adrenaline crash, shock, or both. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to focus on simple tasks. Coffee, water. Don't think about the men who died tonight. Don't think about the ones still trying to kill her. Don't think about what might be on that case. Morrison's voice cut through her thoughts. Got something. She carried 2 mugs over to the computer. Morrison had bypassed the first encryption layer, revealing a directory tree with hundreds of files. He clicked one at random. A mission report appeared, dated 3 years ago. Location classified. Target a weapons manufacturer in Eastern Europe suspected of supplying insurgents. Emily read the operational summary. Reconnaissance. Infiltration. Elimination. Elimination. That was the word they used instead of assassination. Keep going, she said. Morrison opened another file. Then another. A pattern emerged, targets across 3 continents. All eliminated by the same team. Daniel's team. Some were obvious bad actors, terrorists. War criminals. People. The world was better off without. But others were murkier. A journalist in Prague who'd been investigating arms deals. A bureaucrat in Manila who'd refused to approve a mining contract. A scientist in Singapore working on pharmaceutical patents. These aren't military targets. Emily said quietly. Morrison's jaw was tight. No, they're not. They kept reading. The files went back 5 years. Dozens of operations. Some sanctioned by official channels. Others authorized by nobody. Or at least nobody whose name appeared in any documentation. Emily felt sick. This is what blacklight was. She said, not counterterrorism. Not national security. Just murder for hire. For who? That's when Morrison found the financial records. They were buried deep in the directory, encrypted separately. But once he cracked them, the picture became clear. Shell corporations, offshore accounts, wire transfers from companies. Emily recognized defense contractors, tech firms, pharmaceutical giants, people paying blacklight to eliminate obstacles. How much money are we talking about? Emily asked. Morrison scrolled through the ledger. Conservatively, $500 million over 5 years. Emily's coffee mug slipped from her hand. It hit the floor, but didn't break. Just rolled away, spilling dark liquid across the wood. Morrison wasn't done. And look at this. Recent transfers. 3 weeks ago, $10 million from an account registered to, he stopped. Emily leaned closer. Morrison turned the monitor so she could see the screen clearly. The account was registered to Harborview Medical Foundation, the charitable organization run by Harrison Bellamy, Marcus Bellamy's father. Emily's blood turned to ice. They paid for a hit. On who Morrison clicked through to the corresponding mission file, it opened slowly. Each line of text appearing like a verdict being read. Target Major Thomas Daniels, objective elimination reason security compromise. End of Sefton. Potential whistleblower. Authorization. Client request status. In progress, Daniels wasn't attacked at random, Emily said, her voice barely a whisper. The bridge accident was staged. The code black was manufactured. Everything tonight was designed to get him into that hospital so they could finish the job. And you saved him, which means whoever paid for this knows I'm a problem. Morrison started closing files, copying everything to an encrypted drive. We need to get this to someone. Real federal authorities. Inspector General. Someone outside the chain. Who do we trust? I don't know. But sitting on this gets us killed. Emily's phone buzzed. She'd almost forgotten she still had it. Service must have come back now that they were out of the dead zone. She checked the screen. 7 missed calls, all from Harborview, and 1 new message from Director Cross. We need to talk. Immediately. Lives depend on it. Emily showed Morrison. Could be a trap. He said, could be legitimate. You want to risk it. Emily thought about Cross standing in the hospital entrance, looking like he'd aged a decade. She thought about his face when he tried to force her to sign the NDA. Scared. Desperate. Like someone in over his head who just realized how deep the water was. He knows something, Emily said. Something that made him resign tonight instead of waiting for the investigation. Or someone told him to resign before he could talk. Either way, we need to find out. Morrison didn't like it. Emily could see that in the set of his shoulders. The way his hand drifted toward his sidearm. But he didn't argue. Your call, he said finally. But we do this smart. Public place. Daytime. I'm armed and watching the exits. Agreed. Emily called Cross back. He answered on the first ring. Vance. Thank God. Are you safe? For now. You said lives depend on talking. Whose lives? Cross's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Everyone's. Emily, I know what you found. I know about the case. And I know who's behind all of this. Tell me. Not over the phone. Meet me tomorrow. 10 a.m. The pier at Breakwater Point. You know it. Yes. Come alone. Not happening. Cross was quiet for a moment. Then bring whoever you trust. But understand the people behind this have reached. They have money. They have power. And they will kill anyone who threatens to expose them. Who are they tomorrow? 10 a.m. Please. Emily. If you care about the truth, be there. He hung up. Emily lowered the phone slowly. Morrison was watching her. His expression unreadable. Breakwater Point. She said, "Teen aim. You believe him. I believe he's terrified. Whether that makes him trustworthy is another question." Morrison nodded. "Get some sleep. I'll take first watch." Emily wanted to argue, but exhaustion hit her like a physical weight. She stumbled to the cabin's single bedroom, collapsed on the bed without bothering to remove her shoes, and was asleep in seconds. She dreamed of operating rooms filled with shadows, of patients who flatlined no matter what she did, of Bellamy's hand coming down again and again, each slap echoing like gunfire. She woke to Morrison shaking her shoulder. "What time is it?" she mumbled. "4 a.m. We've got a problem." Emily sat up, her head pounding. What kind of problem? Morrison handed her his phone. On the screen was a news article posted 20 minutes ago. The headline read, "Federal manhunt underway for former military nurse wanted in connection with Harborview attack." Emily's photo was right there. Her real photo from her military ID 3 years ago. She read the article with growing horror. According to unnamed federal sources, Emily Vance was a person of interest in the hospital attack, potentially radicalized, possibly working with domestic extremists, armed and dangerous. "They're framing you," Morrison said, "for what everything, the attack, the casualties. They're saying you were working with the shooters, that you helped them get access to classified personnel." Emily's hands were shaking again. "That's insane." Isaud Daniels. "I stopped them. Doesn't matter. By the time the truth comes out, you'll be dead or disappeared. Standard playbook for burning an asset." Emily stood, pacing the small bedroom. Her mind raced through options and came up empty. If she was wanted by federal authorities, she couldn't go to the meeting with Cross. Couldn't go anywhere public. Couldn't trust local police or FBI or anyone wearing a badge. "We run," Morrison said. "Canada, Mexico, somewhere without extradition, and let them bury the truth. Better than dying for it." Emily stopped pacing, looked at Morrison. "You really believe that?" Morrison held her gaze for a long moment. Then he looked away. "No. Then we go to the meeting. That's suicide." "Maybe. But Cross said he knows who's behind this. If we can get that information, get it to the right people, we might have a chance. And if it's a trap," Emily smiled without humor, "then at least we'll know." Morrison didn't smile back, but he didn't argue either. They spent the next 5 hours preparing. Morrison had a small arsenal in the cabin: handguns, a rifle, the body armor that probably wouldn't stop military-grade rounds but was better than nothing. He gave Emily a crash course in the weapons, made her practice drawing and aiming until her hands stopped shaking. At 9:30, they left for Breakwater Point. The pier was a tourist spot during summer ice cream stands and charter boats and families taking selfies. In late October, it was mostly deserted. Just a few fishermen and dog walkers braving the cold wind off the ocean. Morrison parked 3 blocks away. They approached on foot, scanning for threats. Emily spotted Cross immediately. He was sitting on a bench near the end of the pier, hands in his pockets, looking out at the water. "Alone, could be a sniper setup?" Morrison murmured. "Could be." They kept walking. Cross turned when they were 20 feet away. His face was haggard, gray stubble visible in the morning light. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Emily," he said, "thank you for coming. Talk fast. I'm wanted for terrorism." Apparently. Cross flinched. "I know. That was them. The people behind Blacklight, who..." Cross looked around nervously, as if expecting someone to materialize from thin air. "It's not one person. It's a network. Defense contractors, pharmaceutical executives, tech billionaires, people who use Blacklight to eliminate competition, silence whistleblowers, remove obstacles, and Harborview, Harrison Bellamy is one of them." He's been funding operations for years through the Foundation. His son Marcus didn't know. Not at first. But he found out, threatened to expose everything. Emily's breath caught. Marcus Bellamy was going to whistleblow 2 weeks ago. That's why they needed Daniels dead. He was the one Marcus contacted, the one who promised protection in exchange for testimony. The pieces clicked into place. The attack on Daniels, the Code Black, the manufactured chaos, they were going to kill both of them. Emily said, "Make it look like collateral damage from the hospital attack." Cross nodded. "But you saved Daniels, which means they had to pivot, frame you, discredit anything you might say. Where's Marcus now?" Cross's expression crumbled. "That's why I called you. They took him this morning. Seize him. Right out of his apartment. Federal agents with valid credentials and a warrant. For what? Obstruction of justice. Witness tampering. Charges that won't stick but give them time to make him disappear." Morrison stepped closer. "Where would they take him?" "I don't know, but I know who does." Cross pulled out a business card and handed it to Emily. "This woman, she's Blacklight's handler, the one who coordinates everything. If anyone knows where Marcus is, it's here." Emily looked at the card. "Carolyn Pierce, Senior Vice President, Meridian Strategic Solutions. An address in downtown Crescent Bay. You're asking me to what?" "Exactly," Emily said. "Walk into a corporate office and demand answers. I'm asking you to save an innocent man before they kill him like they've killed dozens of others. And you couldn't do this yourself because Cross's laugh was bitter. Because I'm a coward. Because I've known about this for 6 months and said nothing. Because I took their money and looked the other way while people died." Emily stared at him. "You knew. Not everything. But enough. Enough to stop it if I'd been brave." Cross stood, his hands shaking. "I can't undo what I've done. But maybe you can stop them before anyone else dies." "Why should I trust you?" "Because I'm all you've got." Morrison's hand went to his sidearm. "That's not reassuring." Cross looked at Morrison. Then, back at Emily, "The case Daniels gave you. It has everything. Names, accounts, operations. But it's incomplete. It doesn't have the command structure, doesn't prove who's giving the orders. Carolyn Pierce has that. She keeps hard copies in her office. Old school. No digital trail. How do you know that? Because I saw them once. When Harrison Bellamy made me sign onto the Foundation board, he wanted me to understand the stakes. Wanted me complicit." Emily's mind raced. If Pierce had the complete records, they could prove everything. Expose the entire network. Save Marcus. And anyone else caught in the machine. Or die trying. "Where's Harrison Bellamy now?" Emily asked. Cross shook his head. "Gone. Left the country 2 days ago. Switzerland. I think somewhere without extradition. Convenient. Calculated. He knew this was coming. Knew. Eventually someone would talk." Morrison pulled Emily aside. "This is insane. We can't just walk into a corporate headquarters. You have a better idea." "Yeah. We take what we have to a journalist. Someone big. Let them run with it. And Marcus dies while we wait for the story to break. He might be dead already." Emily knew he was right. Knew this was probably a suicide mission wrapped in good intentions. But she thought about Daniels, bleeding on a gurney, trusting her with the truth. She thought about the journalist in Prague and the scientist in Singapore and all the other names in those files. She thought about Marcus Bellamy slapping her and then, hours later, becoming a target for trying to do the right thing. "I'm going," she said. Morrison closed his eyes. "Yeah. I figured." They turned back to Cross. "Give us everything you know about Meridian Strategic Solutions. Layout. Security. Access points." Cross did. 15 minutes later, Emily and Morrison were back in the SUV, heading toward downtown Crescent Bay with a plan that had maybe a 30% chance of working. "You know, this is crazy," Morrison said. "You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true, Emily checked the handgun Morrison had given her. 17 rounds. She'd probably need all of them. They reached the Meridian building just after 11. It was a glass tower in the financial district. 40 stories of steel and ambition. Corporate headquarters for a company that officially provided security consulting and risk management. Unofficially, they ran assassination operations for the highest bidder. Emily and Morrison entered through the main lobby. Dressed in business, casual clothes, Morrison had scrounged from the cabin. They looked like consultants. Lawyers. Anyone with legitimate business. Security was tight, but not military grade. Badge scanners. Metal detectors. A bored guard who barely glanced at the fake IDs Morrison had printed that morning. They made it to the elevators. 37th floor. Emily said quietly. Morrison hit the button. The elevator rose. Emily counted floors. Hier Pulse hammering. 20. 25. 30. The doors opened on 37. And every alarm in the building started screaming at once. Emily's hand went to her weapon before her brain caught up. Morrison was already moving. Pulling her back into the elevator, hitting the door close button. Nothing happened. The elevator was frozen. Doors locked open. The alarm shrieking like it had a personal grudge. Stairs? Morrison said. They ran. The emergency exit was 15 feet down the hall. Emily hit the door at full sprint. Morrison right behind her. The stairwell was concrete and steel, their footsteps echoing as they descended. Above them, voices. Men coordinating on radios. Boots on stairs. Getting closer. They knew we were coming. Emily said between breaths. Cross sold us out. Or they were already watching. They made it down 3 floors before the shooting started. Suppressed rounds, punching through the stairwell walls. Concrete dust exploding in white clouds. Morrison returned fire, aiming high to keep them pinned while Emily kept moving. 29th floor. 28th. Emily's lungs were burning. Her head still ached from the concussion, and every step sent fresh spikes of pain through her ribs. Morrison grabbed her arm at the 26th floor landing. Through here, they crashed through the door into an accounting firm's office space. Cubicles stretched in neat rows. Computers humming. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Empty. Everyone evacuated when the alarms went off. Morrison pushed a filing cabinet in front of the stairwell door. It wouldn't hold long, but it might buy them seconds. Window, Emily asked. 26 stories up. You got a parachute. Then what? Morrison was already moving toward the server room at the back of the floor. We find another way down. They made it halfway across the office when the window behind them exploded inward. Not from gunfire. From something heavier? A breaching charge that turned the glass wall into a hurricane of glittering shrapnel. 2 men rappelled down from the floor above. Rifles already tracking targets. Professional. Fast, Emily dove behind a cubicle, as rounds tore through the particle board like it was tissue paper. Morrison fired twice. Dropped. 1 attacker. But the second had already found cover. Move, Morrison shouted. Emily ran low, using the cubicles for concealment. Not cover. Nothing here would stop a bullet, but at least the shooter couldn't see her clearly. She reached the server room. Morrison was 3 steps behind her when the second repeller appeared. Cutting him off, Morrison pivoted. Fired. The magazine clicked empty. The repeller smiled. Emily shot him through the cubicle wall. She'd aimed for center mass. Muscle memory from training. She'd tried to forget. The man went down hard. Morrison grabbed his rifle. Checked the magazine. 12 rounds. He said, "That's it. Then we make them count." Inside the server room, Morrison sealed the door and started pulling network cables. "What are you doing?" Emily asked. "Buying insurance." He grabbed a laptop bag from under one of the workstations. Fired it up. If Pierce has the complete records, they might back them up to a server. If we're lucky. We're not lucky. If we're lucky, Morrison continued, his fingers flying over the keyboard. Her paranoia works against her. She wouldn't trust cloud storage. Too vulnerable. But a local server she controls, that's different. Emily watched the door. Shadows moving in the gap underneath. They were regrouping, planning their next move. How long, she asked? 2 minutes. Maybe 3. We don't have 3. Morrison didn't answer. Just kept typing. His face illuminated by the screen's glow. Emily checked her weapon. 9 rounds left. Against how many? She'd seen at least 6 hostiles. Probably more. Math that didn't add up to survival. The door handle rattled. Then a voice came through. Female. Calm. Miss Vance. I think we should talk. Emily recognized that voice from the business card. Carolyn Pierce. I'm not interested in conversation. Emily called back. No. Not even if I tell you where, Dr. Siv. Bellamy, as Emily's finger tightened on the trigger. You're bluffing. Am I? He's alive? For now. But that can change very quickly if you don't cooperate. Morrison looked up from the laptop, shook his head slightly. Don't engage. But Emily was already talking. Cooperate how the case. Daniels gave you something. I want it back. So you can bury the evidence. Pierce laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Evidence of what? A defunct military program that hasn't operated in 2 years. You think anyone cares about ancient history? People died. People always die. Miss Vance. That's the nature of war. What matters is who wins? Emily's jaw clenched. And you think you've won? I know I have. You're trapped in a server room with limited ammunition and no backup. I have 20 men outside this door and unlimited resources. How do you see this ending? Morrison held up the laptop. On the screen was a directory tree, thousands of files downloading to an external drive, 70% complete. Emily needed to buy time. You want the case, she said. Fine. But I want proof Bellamy's alive. A photo. Time-stamped. Silence from the other side of the door. Then Pierce's voice again, slightly less confident. That wasn't part of the negotiation. It is now. Send me proof in the next 60 seconds, or I destroy the case. You wouldn't? Emily pulled out Daniel's case, held it up so the camera she assumed was watching could see it. Try me. More silence. Morrison's download hit 85%. Emily counted heartbeats. 30 seconds. Forte. Her phone buzzed. A photo appeared on the screen. Marcus Bellamy, zip-tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse. His face was bruised. One eye swollen shut. But he was alive. The metadata showed the image was taken 11 minutes ago. Satisfied, Pierce asked, where is he? The case first. 90%. Emily made a decision she hoped she wouldn't regret. I'm putting it outside the door. Unarmed. You take it and leave? We walk out of here. Pierce laughed again. You think I'm stupid the moment you open that door. We come in shooting. Then we're at an impasse. 95%. Morrison ejected the external drive, shoved it in his pocket. Then he started typing again. His expression grim. What are you doing? Emily whispered. Scorched earth. On the screen? Morrison was uploading the files to a dozen different servers simultaneously. News organizations, whistleblower sites, congressional oversight committees. If they died here, at least the truth would survive. 100%. Morrison closed the laptop. Done. Emily looked at the case in her hand, then at the door, then at Morrison. We're not giving them anything. She said, agreed. And we're not dying in a server room. Also agreed. Any brilliant ideas? Emily scanned the room. Standard office setup, raised floor for cable management. Drop ceiling for HVAC. Reinforced walls for fire protection. Raised floor. She knelt, pried up one of the floor tiles. Underneath was a 2-foot crawl space, filled with network cables and power conduits. Barely enough room to squeeze through. Morrison saw what she was thinking. You're kidding. You said no parachute. This is the next best thing. They started pulling up tiles, creating a gap large enough to slip through. The space was tight, dark, claustrophobic. Emily went first, wiggling between cables, her injured ribs screaming with every movement. Morrison followed, replacing the tiles above them as he crawled. They made it 6 feet before the server room door exploded inward. Through the thin gap between tiles, Emily watched Pierce's men flood the room. 8 of them, rifles up. Clearing corners with mechanical precision, Pierce herself walked in last, her heels clicking on the raised floor directly above Emily's head. "Kute," Pierce said, but pointless. She gestured. 2 of her men started pulling up floor tiles. Emily and Morrison crawled faster, staying just ahead of the search. The space was a maze of cables and support beams, barely navigable in the darkness. They reached an access panel that led to the floor below. Morrison forced it open. Dropped through. Emily followed, landing hard on her shoulder in what looked like a conference room. No alarms here. The evacuation had cleared this floor too. They ran. Behind them, Pierce was shouting orders, coordinating the chase. She sounded angry now, the calm facade cracking. Emily and Morrison made it to the central elevator bank. All the cars were locked at ground-level security protocol during an emergency maintenance shaft, Morrison said, pointing to a narrow door marked authorized personnel only. They pried it open. Inside was a vertical shaft with a ladder bolted to the concrete wall. Emily looked down. It descended into darkness so deep she couldn't see the bottom. "After you," Morrison said. Emily started climbing down. Her hands were slick with sweat, her grip uncertain. Every few rungs, her injured ribs made her gasp. She kept moving anyway. Morrison was right above her, his boots occasionally kicking loose. Concrete that rained down past Emily's head. 23rd floor. 20th. 15th. They were making progress when Morrison's radio, the one he'd taken from the repeller, crackled to life. Pierce's voice. "All units. Collapse the perimeter. I want every exit covered. Nobody leaves this building." Emily looked up at Morrison. "How many exits are there?" 4 main ones. Plus loading dock. Emergency exits. Parking garage. She can't cover all of them. She doesn't have to. She just needs to delay us until federal authorities arrive. They're already framing me for terrorism. What's one more crime, the difference between life in prison and a black site you never come back from? Emily kept climbing. They reached the 10th floor when her phone buzzed again. She almost didn't check it. Her hands were too busy keeping her alive, but something made her look. A text from an unknown number. "Parking garage? Levelbkettu. White phone. Keys in the wheel well. Get Belame. Evidence is in his pocket." Cross Emily showed Morrison. "Could be another trap," he said. "Could be genuine. You want to bet your life on Cross having a change of heart." Emily thought about the broken man on the pier, the resignation in his voice, the way he'd called himself a coward. "Yeah," she said. "I do." They changed direction, heading for the parking garage. Access at the 3rd floor. The ladder ended at a maintenance platform. Morrison forced open another door, and they were in the building's service corridor, all exposed pipes and flickering lights and the smell of old grease. The parking garage entrance was 50 feet away. They made it 20 feet before Pierce's men found them. Not a full squad this time. Just 2. Cutting off their escape route. Both armed. Both already raising their weapons. Morrison fired first. The rifle clicked empty after 3 shots. One attacker went down. The other ducked behind a support column. Emily ran at him. It was stupid. Reckless. The kind of move that got you killed in any tactical manual ever written, but Emily wasn't thinking tactically. She was thinking about Marcus Bellamy tied to a chair, about Daniels bleeding out on a gurney, about every person the Blacklight Network had killed while people like Cross looked the other way. She hit the attacker low, driving her shoulder into his midsection. They went down together, her bad ribs screaming. The attacker tried to bring his rifle around. Emily grabbed it, twisted, used her weight to wrench it from his grip. Morrison appeared above them. Kicked the attacker in the head. Once. Twice. The man went still. Emily stood slowly, her vision swimming. I think I broke something. Probably several things. Can you move? Have to. They pushed through the parking garage entrance. Level B2 was 2 floors down. They took the ramp at a jog. Emily's breathing ragged. The white van was exactly where Cross said it would be. Morrison grabbed the keys from the wheel well. Opened the back doors. Inside was Marcus Bellamy. He was unconscious. Still zip-tied. But alive. Emily checked his pulse, weak but steady. She felt his pockets. Found a USB drive in his jacket. This has to be it, she said. Morrison started the van. We need to move. They'll lock down the garage any second. Emily climbed in back with Marcus. Cut his zip ties with Morrison's knife. Marcus, can you hear me? His eyes fluttered open. When he saw her, confusion crossed his face. Vance. Yeah. We're getting you out. You. Slapped you. I slapped you. I remember. I'm sorry. I was scared. Father said if I didn't, he coughed. Winced. Doesn't matter now. Morrison gunned the engine. The van lurched forward. Tires squealing on the concrete. Behind them, the garage entrance barriers started to descend. Morrison floored it. They made it through with inches to spare. The barriers scraping the van's roof with a sound like tearing metal. Then they were out. Into daylight. Merging with traffic on the street outside. Emily expected pursuit. Gunfire. Something. Instead, there was just the normal chaos of downtown Crescent Bay at noon. Cars honking. Pedestrians crossing. Life happening like the world hadn't just tilted sideways. Morrison drove carefully, following traffic laws, doing nothing to attract attention. Just another delivery van in a city full of them. Emily helped Marcus sit up. What's on the drive? Everything. Comment structure. Order, authorization. Financial records linking my father to 63 kills over 4 years. Why did you keep it? Marcus looked at her with those bruised eyes. Insurance. In case he tried to silence me. He did. I know. Emily's phone rang. Not a text this time. An actual call from Cross. She answered. Talk. Did you get him? Cross asked. We got him in Talda. And the evidence he has it. Now what? Cross was quiet for a moment. Now you run. As far and as fast as you can. Because what you're holding will destroy some of the most powerful people in this country. And they will kill you before they let it go public. You said you wanted to help. I do. That's why I'm telling you to run. Emily looked at Marcus. At Morrison driving. At the city passing by outside the van's windows. No, she said. Emily, I'm done running. We're taking this public. Right now, you'll never make it to a federal building. They'll stop you. Then we don't go federal. Emily pulled out the business card Cross had given her, the one with Carolyn Pierce's name on it. On the back, Cross had written an address. Where's this KBAY News? Local station. Why? Because they have cameras. And we're going to use them. Cross sucked in a breath. That's suicide. Maybe? But it's suicide with witnesses. She hung up. Morrison glanced in the rearview mirror. We're going where KBAY News. 3 blocks from here. And then we tell everyone what blacklight really is. Marcus grabbed her arm. They'll destroy you. My father has lawyers. Fixers. People who make problems disappear. Your father's in Switzerland. And we have proof he can't bury. They'll claim it's fake. Manufactured. They'll discredit everything. Emily looked at the USB drive in her hand. Then at Marcus. Will they discredit you? Marcus went very still. What? You're Harrison Bellamy's son. A respected trauma surgeon. If you go on camera and tell the truth. They can't call that fake. I'll lose everything. My career. My reputation. People are dead. Marcus. Your father paid to have them killed. What's your reputation worth compared to that? Marcus closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had shifted. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something harder. Resignation? Maybe. Or just exhaustion. Okay, he said quietly. Let's burn it all down. Morrison pulled up to KBAY News 3 minutes later. It was a squat brick building with satellite dishes on the roof, and the station's logo, a stylized lighthouse, painted across the entrance. Emily helped Marcus out of the van. He could barely walk, leaning heavily on her shoulder. They made it to the front doors before someone inside noticed them. A security guard looked up from his desk, started to wave them away. Then he saw Marcus's face, the bruises, the blood. The guard was already reaching for his phone when Emily said, "We need to talk to whoever's in charge of your news division. Right now, it's about Harborview Medical Center and a conspiracy to commit murder." The guard stared at her. "Mom, you can't just..." "My name is Emily Vance. I'm wanted by federal authorities for terrorism. I didn't commit. This is Dr. Marcus Belame. He has evidence that will expose a government assassination program, and if you don't get us in front of a camera in the next 5 minutes, more people will die." The guard looked at Morrison, who was armed, and looked every inch the operator he was, and made a decision. He picked up his phone. "Get me Sharon Ortiz." Now, Sharon Ortiz turned out to be KBAY's news director, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and the kind of eyes that had seen everything twice. She appeared in the lobby 90 seconds later. I took one look at Emily and Marcus and said, "Conference room." Now, they followed her upstairs. Morrison stayed by the door, watching the street through the window. Ortiz sat across from them, her hands folded on the table. "You have 2 minutes to convince me this isn't a waste of my time." Emily slid the USB drive across the table. "This contains evidence of a Black Ops assassination program called Blacklight, financial records, mission logs, proof that defense contractors and corporate executives have been paying the government to eliminate people they consider obstacles." Ortiz picked up the drive. "And you are a nurse who got in the way. The nurse wanted for terrorism. That's what they're calling it. The truth is, I saved a man they wanted dead." Ortiz looked at Marcus. "Dr. Belame, I recognize you from the hospital gala last year. Why are you here?" Marcus took a shaky breath. "Because my father is one of the people who paid for these killings. And I'm ready to testify to that on camera." Ortiz was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, walked to the door, and locked it. "You understand what you're asking me to do?" She said, "If I air this and it's wrong, my career is over. This station gets sued into oblivion. People go to jail. It's not wrong." Emily said, "Prove it." Morrison pulled out the external drive he'd loaded at Meridian. "We have their complete server archive. Every operation, every payment, every kill." Ortiz took the drive, plugged it into her laptop. Her face stayed neutral as she scrolled through files. But Emily saw her expression shift, tighten, the moment she understood this was real. "How long before they come after you?" Ortiz asked. "They're probably already on their way." Emily said, "Then we need to move fast." Ortiz opened her office door, shouted into the newsroom, "Kevin, get a crew to Studio B. We're doing a live special report in 10 minutes on what someone called back story of the year. Move." The next 10 minutes were chaos makeup artists trying to cover Marcus's bruises, producers arguing about legal liability, technical directors running cable and setting lights. Emily sat in the green room and tried not to throw up. Morrison appeared beside her. "You don't have to do this. We can still walk away and go anywhere. New identities. Fresh start." Emily shook her head. "That's not a life. That's hiding. Hiding keeps you breathing. For how long until they find us? Until someone else pays the price for our silence." She looked at him. "You know I'm right." Morrison sighed. "Yeah. Doesn't mean I like it." A production assistant stuck her head in. 2 minutes. They walked onto the set, a simple desk setup with the KBAY logo behind them, Marcus sat beside Emily, his hands trembling. Ortiz took her position across from them, or her expression. All business. We're going live in 60 seconds. Once we start, there's no stopping. You'll be targets the moment this airs. We're already targets. Emily said. Fair point. The floor director counted down. 5, 4, 3. The red light came on. Ortiz looked directly into the camera. Good afternoon. I'm Sharon Ortiz, with a breaking news special report. What you're about to hear will sound impossible, but we have verified the evidence, and we believe the public has a right to know the truth about a program called Blacklight. She turned to Emily. Miss Vance, tell us what happened at Harborview Medical Center 3 nights ago. Emily took a breath. Then she started talking. She told them everything. The attack, Daniels, the case, the files showing years of sanctioned killings funded by people the public trusted. Marcus corroborated every detail, his voice steady despite his injuries. He named his father, named the board members of Harborview Medical Foundation, named every person he knew was complicit. They showed documents on screen, financial transfers, mission reports, kill confirmations. 30 minutes into the broadcast, Emily's phone started buzzing with incoming calls. She ignored them all. 40 minutes in, Morrison appeared at the studio door, his expression grim. He made a cutting gesture across his throat. They were out of time. Ortiz saw it too. She wrapped the interview quickly. Promised follow-up coverage. And cut to commercial. We need to go, Morrison said. Now? How many? Emily asked. At least a dozen vehicles converging on this location. Federal plates. They'll be here in 3 minutes. Ortiz stood. There's a back exit through the production bay. Take it. We'll delay them as long as we can. Emily grabbed her hand. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This story's not over. They ran through the production bay, past startled camera operators and sound engineers, out into an alley that smelled like garbage and old cooking oil. Morrison's van was gone, probably already confiscated. They'd have to run on foot. They made it 2 blocks before Emily's legs gave out. The adrenaline crash hit her all at once. Combined with the concussion and the broken ribs and 3 days of running on empty, Marcus caught her before she fell. I got you. I'm fine. You're not. But we keep moving anyway. Morrison flagged down a taxi, an ancient sedan that looked like it predated the internet. The driver took one look at them and started to refuse. Morrison pulled out a wad of cash. $500. No questions. Drive. The driver took the money. They piled into the back seat. Morrison gave an address Emily didn't recognize. Where are we going? She asked. Safe house. Different one. Nobody knows about this one but me. They drove in silence through city streets that suddenly felt hostile. Every police car made Emily flinch. Every pedestrian could be a threat. Her phone buzzed again. This time she looked. A text from Ortiz Stories already gone viral. Networks are picking it up. You did it. Another text came through immediately after. Different number. You just signed your own death warrant. Pierce Emily showed Morrison. He read both messages. His expression unreadable. She's probably right. About which one both? The taxi dropped them in a residential neighborhood on the city's outskirts. Morrison paid the driver another $100 to forget he'd ever seen them. The safe house was a small bungalow with peeling paint and a yard overgrown with weeds. Morrison unlocked the door with a key hidden under a ceramic frog. Inside smelled like dust and abandonment. How long can we stay here? Emily asked. As long as we need to. Place is owned by a shell company that doesn't trace back to me. Marcus collapsed onto a couch that looked older than Emily. What happens now? Now we wait. Morrison said, the story's out there. Federal investigators will have to respond. Congressional oversight. Maybe even DOJ. Or they bury it. Marcus said quietly, my father has friends everywhere. They'll claim it's disinformation. Foreign propaganda. Anything to discredit us? Emily's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Emily Vance. She said, Miss Vance. The voice was male. Measured. With the kind of authority that didn't need to announce itself. My name is Alexander Hunt. I'm with the Inspector General's office. Department of Defense. I've just finished watching your interview. Emily's heart hammered. And I'd like to offer you protective custody while we investigate your allegations. How do I know this isn't a trap? You don't, but I can tell you that what you've revealed has created a firestorm at the highest levels of government. People are scared, which means they're going to make mistakes. I'd like to be there when they do. Emily looked at Morrison. He was listening, his hand on his weapon. What kind of protective custody, she asked. Federal facility. Armed guards. Complete isolation until we can verify your evidence and secure warrants. For who? Everyone involved, including Carolyn Pierce, who was arrested 20 minutes ago, attempting to board a private flight to Dubai. Emily felt something loosen in her chest. She's in custody. Along with 6 members of Meridian Strategic Solutions executive team, we're moving fast. Miss Vance, but we need your cooperation. What about Marcus Bellamy, him too? And Major Daniels. Anyone with knowledge of blacklight operations? Emily closed her eyes. Where do we meet? Hunt gave her an address. A federal building downtown. Heavy security. Public enough that an ambush would be difficult. They arrived 90 minutes later in a borrowed car Morrison had stashed nearby. FBI agents met them at the entrance, checked their IDs, and escorted them to a secure floor. Hunt was waiting in a conference room, late 50s. Gray suit. The kind of face that had interrogated better liars than Emily would ever be. Miss Vance, he said, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? There's always a choice. You made the right one. They sat. Hunt opened a file folder thick with documents. Before we begin, he said, I need you to understand something. What you've exposed isn't just a rogue operation, it's institutional. People at the highest levels of government and private industry have been complicit. Bringing them down will take time. Maybe years. I don't care how long it takes, Emily said. Good. Because they're going to fight hard. They'll use every resource they have to discredit you, to claim you fabricated evidence, to paint you as a terrorist or a traitor or whatever narrative serves them best. Let them try. Hunt almost smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. He spent the next 4 hours walking them through their testimony. Every detail, every name, every transaction. Marcus corroborated everything, adding details about his father's involvement that made even Hunt's poker face crack. When they finished, it was past midnight. Hunt closed his folder. You'll be moved to a secure facility tonight. Separate locations for security. You won't be able to contact each other until the investigation concludes. How long? Morrison asked. Weeks. Maybe months. Emily stood slowly, her body aching. And then you testify. Grand jury first. Then congressional hearings. If this goes where I think it will. After that? Hunt shrugged. After that, you try to build a life out of whatever's left. They were separated in the underground parking garage. Emily watched Morrison and Marcus get into different vehicles. Both headed to locations she wasn't cleared to know. An agent opened the door of a black SUV for her. Ready. Ma'am. Emily looked back at the federal building one last time. Somewhere inside, people were already working to destroy everything she'd built today. Lawyers crafting denials. PR firms spinning narratives. Powerful people. Making phone calls to other powerful people. Let them. She'd done her part. Told the truth. Survived. The rest would have to be enough. She got in the SUV. They drove for 40 minutes. Heading north into countryside. Emily didn't recognize. The safe house was a ranch-style home behind a security gate. Agents stationed at every entrance. You'll be comfortable here. The agent said, "Anything you need, just ask." Emily nodded, too tired to speak. Inside, the house was clean, but impersonal. Government-issued furniture, blank walls, a bedroom that could have been in any suburb in America. She collapsed on the bed without bothering to undress. Sleep didn't come. She lay there in the darkness, listening to unfamiliar sounds, her mind replaying the last 72 hours on an endless loop. The slap, the gunfire, Daniel's bleeding out, Marcus tied to a chair, Pierce's voice promising death. Her phone buzzed. She'd forgotten she still had it. The agents must have cleared it, deemed it safe. A text from an unknown number. "Well done. Captain, you've made powerful enemies, but you've also made one powerful friend. When you're ready to finish what you started, call this number." Emily stared at the message. Finish what you started. What did that mean? The investigation was underway. Pierce was arrested. The story was public. What else was there to finish? Her phone buzzed again. Different number. This message made her blood freeze. "You think this is over? You think arresting Pierce changes anything?" She was middle management. The real power hasn't even shown its hand yet. And when it does, you'll wish you'd stayed quiet. Sleep well. Emily, while you still can. The message included an attachment. Emily opened it with shaking hands. It was a photo of the safe house, taken from outside, showing her bedroom window, showing the light she'd just turned on. They knew exactly where she was. Emily dropped the phone like it had burned her. The bedroom window was directly behind her, curtains open, light blazing, turning her into a perfect silhouette for anyone watching. She dove sideways, hit the floor hard, her ribs screaming. The light switch was on the far wall. She crawled toward it. Every nerve firing warnings her brain couldn't process fast enough. The window didn't shatter. No gunfire. No breach. Just silence. Emily killed the lights and pressed herself against the wall, breathing hard. Her phone glowed on the floor where she dropped it. The photo still visible. They were watching. Right now? She grabbed the phone, scrambled out of the bedroom into the hallway. The safe house had agents posted outside. She'd seen them when she arrived. Federal protection. Supposed to be secure. But if someone could photograph her window from outside, security was already compromised. Emily found the lead agent in the kitchen, pouring coffee. He looked up when she burst in. "Miss Vance? What's?" She shoved her phone at him. "Someone just sent me this. Taken from outside. Minutes ago." The agent looked at the photo. His expression shifted from confusion to alarm in half a second. He grabbed his radio. "All units. Possible perimeter breach. Lock down the house. Nobody in or out until the power died. Complete darkness. Emergency lighting should have kicked in immediately. It didn't." Emily heard the agent move, fumbling for his weapon. Then a sound like air escaping a suppressed shot, and the agent dropped. Emily ran, blind in the darkness, hands outstretched. She found the hallway by memory and touch. Behind her, footsteps. Multiple people moving through the house with the confidence of those who could see in the dark. Night vision. She made it to what she thought was the back door. Grabbed the handle. Locked from the outside. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness. Found her face. Emily threw up her hand against the glare. "Don't move." A voice said, "Male. Calm." Emily moved anyway, diving left as the flashlight tracked her. She hit furniture, a chair, maybe a table, and kept scrambling. More voices now. Orders being given in clipped military syntax. They were herding her, cutting off exits, forcing her toward the center of the house. Emily's hand found something metal. A fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. She ripped it free, pulled the pin, and sprayed foam in the direction of the voices. Someone cursed. The flashlight beam swung wild. Emily used the confusion to run again, this time toward what she hoped was the garage. If there was a vehicle, keys might be inside. If not, at least she'd be moving. She found the garage door by running face first into it. Her nose exploded with pain. Blood ran hot over her lips. She wrenched the door open and stumbled into the garage. Darker here. No windows. Just the massive bulk of an SUV parked in the center. Emily tried the driver's door. Unlocked. She climbed in. Felt above the visor for keys. Nothing. Checked the ignition. Empty. Behind her. The garage door from the house opened. Light spilled in. Emily dropped to the floor of the SUV. Trying to be small. Trying to be invisible. Footsteps approached. Someone opened the rear door of the vehicle. Checked. The cargo area. Closed it. Emily held her breath. The footsteps moved away. She waited 10 seconds. 20. Then she slipped out of the SUV and moved toward the garage's exterior door, the big rolling door meant for vehicles. There was a manual release handle. She grabbed it, pulled. The door started to rise with a mechanical grinding that sounded like the end of the world. Emily didn't wait for it to fully open. She dropped and rolled under when the gap was 2 feet high. Came up running on the driveway outside. The night was cold. Moonless. Woods surrounded the property dense enough to hide in if she could reach them. She made it 15 feet before someone tackled her from behind. They went down together in the gravel. Emily's chin hitting hard enough to see stars. A knee pressed into her spine. Hands grabbed her wrists, yanking them behind her back. Got her. The voice above her called out. More footsteps. A flashlight in her face again. Emily Vance. This voice was different. Older. Authoritative. You're a difficult woman to kill. Emily spat blood and gravel. Who are you? Someone who's been cleaning up after blacklight since before you were born. The knee lifted from her spine. Hands pulled her to her feet. Emily blinked against the flashlight, trying to see who was talking. The beam lowered slightly, revealing a man in his 70s. Silver hair. Expensive suit under a dark overcoat. The kind of face that had smiled through 1,000 board meetings while signing death warrants. You don't know me, the man continued. And you never will. I don't exist in any database you accessed. No financial records. No mission logs. Because I'm not part of the operation. I'm the operation. The real power, Emily said, remembering the text message. Very good. Carolyn Pierce was middle management. Harrison Bellamy was a client. Even Major Daniels only knew a fraction of the structure. But you've put together enough pieces to become a genuine threat. So you're here to kill me. I'm here to offer you a choice. The man gestured, and someone brought forward a tablet computer. He showed Emily the screen. It was a live feed. Marcus Bellamy. In a different safe house. Sitting at a table, unaware he was being watched. Doctor, Bellamy is currently secured in a federal facility 80 miles from here. The man said, very secure. Unless someone with the right access codes decides he should have an accident. A fire? Perhaps. Electrical fault. Tragic but unavoidable. Emily's stomach dropped. You're threatening him. I'm offering context. You have information that could damage an organization that has operated successfully for 3 decades. We'd prefer that information never reached a courtroom. In exchange for your silence? Doctor, Bellamy lives. You live. Everyone goes home. And if I refuse, the man smiled, then accidents happen, starting with the good doctor, then your friend Morrison, then anyone else who knows what you know. We can make it look like anything. Suicide. Car crash. Drug overdose. The beauty of our resources is their flexibility. Emily's mind raced. Hunt had said the investigation would take months. Congressional hearings, grand juries. But if this man could breach federal safe houses and threaten witnesses, what did any of that matter? How do I know you'll keep your word, she asked. You don't. But consider the alternative. You refuse, and everyone dies anyway. You accept, and at least you have a chance. Emily looked at the screen showing Marcus, then at the armed men surrounding her. Then at the man in the expensive suit who controlled it all. "I need time to think," she said. "You have 60 seconds. Emily's phone was still in her pocket. The armed men hadn't searched her yet. Her hand drifted toward it. One of the men noticed. "Don't." But Emily was already pulling it out. Not to make a call, but to activate the voice recording app she'd turned on in the bedroom. It had been running this entire time, capturing everything. The man in the suit saw what she was doing. His expression didn't change. Cleaver? But recordings can't be dismissed as deepfakes, manufactured evidence, without corroboration. She has corroboration. The voice came from the darkness beyond the flashlights. Everyone turned. Morrison stepped into the light. Rifle raised. Flanked by 6 operators in full tactical gear. Not federal agents. Private contractors. The kind Morrison had worked with before. Extraction team. Morrison said. Been tracking her phone since the safe house went dark. Thanks for the confession. By the way, we got every word. The man in the suit didn't look worried. You're outnumbered. Am I red? Laser dots appeared on the chests of every armed man surrounding Emily. Sniper teams in the woods. Emily realized Morrison had brought an army. The man in the suit raised his hand slowly. This doesn't change anything. Kill me. And 3 more. Take my place. This organization is bigger than one person. Maybe, Morrison said, but you're the one here right now. And you just threatened federal witnesses on a recorded line. He tossed a small device toward Emily. That's been broadcasting to Inspector General Hunt for the last 5 minutes. He's heard everything. The man's facade cracked. Just for a second. Fear flickered across his face before he controlled it. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. Probably. Morrison agreed. But it's our mistake to make. Sirens wailed in the distance. Growing closer, federal vehicles came screaming up the driveway. 30 seconds later, real ones this time. With Hunt himself stepping out of the lead SUV, Richard Ashford. Hunt said, walking toward the man in the suit. You have the right to remain silent. Emily stopped listening. She was too busy trying to breathe, trying to process that she was alive, that Morrison had found her, that it was actually over. Morrison appeared beside her. You, okay, define, okay. Breathing, conscious, not actively dying. Then yeah, I'm okay. Hunt finished reading Ashford his rights and turned to Emily. We need to debrief. Now, everything he said, everything you recorded, all of it. I need sleep first. Miss Vance, I've been shot at, beaten, framed for terrorism, and threatened with death 5 times in 3 days. I'm giving a statement after I sleep for 12 hours. In a real safe house. With Morrison standing guard, Hunt looked like he wanted to argue. Then he saw Emily's expression and reconsidered. 12 hours. Then we talk. They put her in a hotel. A real one. With room service and clean sheets, and a door that locked from the inside. Morrison took the adjoining room. His people securing the floor. Emily showered until the water ran cold, washing away blood and concrete dust, and the feeling of hands pinning her down. Then she collapsed into bed and slept without dreaming. She woke 14 hours later to her phone buzzing. Morrison was calling. Turn on the news. Emily grabbed the remote, flipped to KBAY. Sharon Ortiz was on screen, looking professionally outraged. Arrested early this morning at his estate in Crescent Bay. Richard Ashford, former CIA deputy director and current chairman of Ashford Industries, is charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Witness, intimidation, and operating an unlawful assassination program spanning 3 decades. Federal prosecutors say this is just the beginning, with dozens more arrests expected in the coming weeks. The screen cut to footage of Ashford being perp-walked into a federal building, his expensive suit rumpled, his hands cuffed behind his back. Emily felt something loosen in her chest, something that had been tight since the moment Bellamy's hand had connected with her face. Morrison knocked on her door. She let him in. "It's spreading," he said. "DOJ just announced a special prosecutor. Senate Oversight Committee is launching hearings. They can't bury this now. What about Pierce flipped? Gave up everyone. NAMIS. Location. Bank accounts. She's looking at 20 years minimum. But she's cooperating to avoid life." Emily sat on the edge of the bed. "And Mark is safe. Already gave his testimony. He's asking about you. Tell him I'm fine. Tell him yourself. He's downstairs." Emily found Marcus in the hotel restaurant, looking better than he had any right to. The bruises were fading, the swelling down. He stood when he saw her. "Emily?" "Marcus." They sat across from each other, the table an awkward distance between them. "I owe you an apology," Marcus said. "Several. Actually, for how I treated you at the hospital, for not speaking up sooner about my father, for being a coward while people died. You're speaking up now. Only because you forced my hand. If you hadn't saved Daniels, I'd still be pretending I didn't know." Emily studied him. "You want absolution, I want to make it right. Whatever that means. It means you testify, every hearing, every trial, every investigation. You don't hide. You don't take a deal. You own what you knew and when you knew it." Marcus nodded slowly. "I can do that. And when it's over, you find a way to actually help people, not for the reputation, not for the legacy. Just because it's right, you make it sound simple. It's not, but it's necessary." They finished breakfast in silence. Before Marcus left, he turned back. "For what it's worth, you're the best nurse I've ever seen. The hospital was worse the moment they pushed you out. I was never really in to begin with. No, but you should have been." The hearing started 3 weeks later. Emily testified for 6 hours on the first day, walking congressmen and senators through everything. The attack, the files, the network of killings disguised as national security. The gallery was packed with reporters, families of victims, people who'd lost loved ones to operations they'd never understand. When Emily finished, she looked directly at the committee chairman. "For 3 decades, this program operated because people like me stayed quiet. Nurses, doctors, soldiers, we saw things that didn't make sense and we looked away. We told ourselves it wasn't our problem, that someone else would handle it. We were wrong. And people died because of that. I can't undo the past, but I can make sure it doesn't happen again." The chairman nodded. "Thank you. Miss Vance, your courage has potentially saved countless lives." Emily didn't feel courageous. She felt tired, but she kept testifying, day after day, case after case. Marcus did too. Morrison. Daniels. When he was healthy enough, slowly, systematically, they dismantled Blacklight. 47 arrests over 6 months. 11 members of Congress implicated. 3 defense contractors shut down. Billions of dollars in illegal contracts exposed. Harrison Bellamy was extradited from Switzerland 8 months after everything started. He stood trial the following spring. Marcus testified against him, his voice never wavering. The verdict came back unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Emily watched from the gallery as they led him away. Marcus sat 2 rows in front of her, his shoulders shaking. After the sentencing, Emily found him outside the courthouse. "You did the right thing," she said. "Doesn't feel right. It never does. But that doesn't make it less necessary." Marcus looked at her. "What will you do now?" Emily had been asking herself the same question for months. The investigation was winding down. The trials would continue for years, but her part was mostly done. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I can't go back to Harborview. Too many ghosts." "Then don't." Marcus pulled out a business card, handed it to her. "I'm opening a clinic. Free medical care for people who can't afford it. Nothing fancy. Just good medicine without the bureaucracy. I need someone who actually knows what they're doing to run it. Emily looked at the card, then at Marcus. You're serious. I've spent my entire career chasing prestige, building a reputation. It got me nothing but blood on my hands. So yeah, I'm serious. Help me build something that actually matters. Emily thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. When do I start? The clinic opened 6 months later in a renovated warehouse on the east side of Crescent Bay. They called it Harborview Community Health, a deliberate reclamation of a name that had meant exclusion and hierarchy. Now it meant something different. Emily ran the medical operations. Marcus handled funding and oversight. Morrison, who'd retired from contract work, managed security and logistics. They hired staff based on skill and compassion, not connections. Treated patients regardless of ability to pay, created protocols that put people over profit. It wasn't perfect. They made mistakes, ran out of supplies, dealt with bureaucrats who wanted them to fail. But they helped people. 1 year after opening, Emily was working late when a young woman came through the door. Mid-20s. Nervous. Clearly uncomfortable. Can I help you? Emily asked. I don't have insurance, but I'm pregnant, and something feels wrong, and I didn't know where else to go. Emily stood. Come on back. We'll figure it out. 4 hours later, after diagnosing a treatable but serious complication and arranging transport to a hospital that could handle the delivery, Emily walked the woman to the ambulance. How much do I owe? The woman asked. Nothing. That's why we're here. But the tests, the medication's covered. Just focus on staying healthy. The woman started crying. I thought I was going to lose my baby. I thought no one would help. Emily squeezed her hand. Someone always helps. You just have to find them. After the ambulance left, Emily sat on the clinic's front steps and looked at the city lights spreading across the bay. Somewhere out there were people like Ashford, like Pierce, like the whole machine of black light. But somewhere out there were also people like Marcus, like Morrison, like the woman she just helped. The world wasn't fair. It was broken in ways Emily couldn't fix alone. But she could fix parts of it, one patient at a time, one choice at a time. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through messages. One from Hunt, updating her on another trial. One from Patricia, the day shift nurse from Harborview, asking if the clinic was hiring. One from Daniels, now working in military reform. Saw the news about the clinic. Proud of you. Captain, you found your battlefield. Emily smiled and texted back, not a captain anymore. Just a nurse, trying to keep people alive. His response came immediately. Same thing. Maybe it was... Emily stood, brushed off her scrubs, and went back inside. There was always more work, always another patient, always another fight worth having. The clinic door closed behind her, and through the window, the sign glowed in the darkness. Harborview Community Health, where everyone belongs. 6 months later, Emily was presenting at a national healthcare conference when someone asked the question she'd been avoiding. Miss Vance, given everything you've been through, don't you ever regret speaking up? Wouldn't it have been easier to stay quiet? Emily looked out at the audience, hundreds of nurses, doctors, medical students, all watching her. Easier, she said. Yeah, absolutely. Staying quiet is always easier. Looking away costs nothing. Minding your business keeps you safe. She paused. But the thing about staying quiet is, you have to live with what you didn't say. You have to look at yourself in the mirror knowing you let something wrong continue because speaking up was inconvenient. And I tried that. For years, I watched people abuse power, hurt patients, treat medicine like a business instead of a calling. I stayed quiet because I thought that's what survival looked like. Emily's voice hardened, but I was wrong. That's not survival. That's just slow death. Death of conscience. Death of purpose. Death of everything that made me become a nurse in the first place. She looked directly at a young woman in the front row who was taking notes. Sono. I don't regret speaking up. I regret not doing it sooner. I regret every day I wasted being invisible when I could have been useful. Because here's what I learned. They only have power over you if you let them. The moment you decide your integrity matters more than their approval, they lose. The audience was silent. You're going to face this choice, Emily continued. Maybe not as dramatically as I did. But you'll see something wrong. Something unjust. And you'll have to decide if you're brave enough to name it, if you're strong enough to stand alone when everyone else is looking away. She smiled small. Tired. Real. Choose to be brave. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because the people who can't speak for themselves need someone who will. And if not you, then who? The applause started slowly, then built until the entire auditorium was standing. Emily stepped off the stage and found Morrison waiting in the wings. Good speech, he said. Too preachy. Nah, just honest. They walked out together, into the conference center's lobby where medical students and young nurses were gathering around Emily, asking questions, wanting advice, looking at her like she had answers. She didn't. Not really. But she had experience and scars and the knowledge that sometimes doing the right thing meant losing everything and finding out what you were really made of. That night, back in Crescent Bay, Emily stopped by the clinic to check on a patient admitted earlier. The woman was stable, sleeping peacefully, her vitals steady on the monitor. Emily stood in the doorway for a moment, watching the rise and fall of the woman's chest. Proof of life. Proof that showing up mattered. Her phone buzzed. A news alert, final blacklight defendant sentenced. Program officially dismantled. It was over. 3 years. 47 convictions. Billions in fines. An entire network of sanctioned killing exposed and destroyed. Emily felt tears she hadn't known were there running down her face. Not from sadness. Not from trauma. From something bigger. Relief. Vindication. The bone-deep certainty that every scar had been worth it. She wiped her eyes, checked her patient one more time, and headed for the exit. Marcus was locking up the front entrance. Saw the news. He said, "Yeah. You okay?" Emily thought about it. Really thought about it. Was she okay? No. She still had nightmares. Still flinched at loud noises. Still carried scars that would never fully heal. But she was alive. Free. Building something that mattered. "I'm getting there," she said. Marcus smiled. "That's all any of us can do." They walked out together into the Crescent Bay night. The clinic sign glowed behind them, a beacon for anyone who needed it. Emily looked back once, at the building they'd built from nothing, at the statement they'd made just by existing. She thought about the temporary nurse who'd been slapped and silenced and told she didn't matter. That woman was gone. In her place was someone who'd learned the most important truth of all. Your worth isn't determined by who recognizes it. Your power isn't granted by those in charge. And your voice doesn't need permission to matter. You just have to be brave enough to use it. Emily pulled out her keys, headed toward her car, and thought about tomorrow. About the patients waiting. About the fight still worth having. About the person she'd become when she stopped being invisible. The drive home took 20 minutes. Emily parked, climbed the stairs to her apartment, and opened the door. On her kitchen table was an envelope, hand-delivered, no return address. Inside was a single card and a newspaper clipping. The clipping showed Harborview Medical Center's new administration, a reformed board, new leadership, a mission statement about patient care and ethical medicine, and at the bottom, a quote from the new medical director: "We owe a debt to those who spoke up when silence would have been easier." Their courage changed everything. The card was simple, just 2 words in elegant script: "Thank you." No signature. Emily didn't need one. She put the card on her refrigerator, next to the photos of clinic patients they'd helped, next to Morrison's terrible joke about trauma surgery, next to the newspaper headline, announcing Ashford's conviction, reminders that speaking up mattered, that courage was contagious. That one person refusing to be silent could start an avalanche. Emily made tea, sat at her window, and watched the city sleep. Tomorrow she'd go back to the clinic, see patients, train new staff, keep building. But tonight, just for a moment, she let herself feel it. The satisfaction of knowing she'd survived, the peace of knowing she'd chosen truth over safety, the quiet pride of understanding that when it mattered most, she hadn't looked away. They'd tried to make her invisible. Instead, she'd set the whole world on fire. And from those ashes, built something worth believing in.